Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching The Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta and joining me today is Smita Sharma. She's an independent journalist who you may have seen on YouTube and as well as on TV earlier. And Sanjay K, he's a senior journalist. The last 10 odd days in India have seen unprecedented protests across the country, not just by doctors but also by ordinary women and civil society taking to the streets demanding safety for women in the workplace as well as elsewhere. Now this has of course come to the ground after a 31-year-old doctor in Kolkata's RG hospital was raped and murdered. Now since then the anger has spilled onto the streets, not just in Kolkata and other parts of West Bengal but across the country as well. Now many are saying that the TMC government under Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is facing her own Shingur Nandigram moment with these protests, and it's a litmus test for whether her government will survive at all. Now, in the meantime, the case, of course, has been transferred to the CBI and it's in the Supreme Court as well. Now, at the same time, on Tuesday, we saw massive demonstrations in Maharashtra as well after the rape of two young girls in Badlapur, and we saw train services were disrupted as thousands of people took to demonstrations, and following that, 4 FIRs were registered against around 500 protesters and more than 66 persons were arrested for those protests. So the state government over there too kind of cracking down on these protesters. The girls were allegedly sexually assaulted by a male attendant at their school on August 12th. Now, a bitter blame game has ensued across the political spectrum, with the TMC kind of alleging that all the attention is on Kolkata while the same kind of events are happening everywhere else. But the scrutiny is on the TMC government, while other governments which are related to the BJP and part of the NDA are not really getting the same amount of scrutiny. And I also want to mention at the same time in Bihar we have seen widespread protests as well after the alleged rape and murder of a Dalit minor girl in Muzaffarpur, which is about 100 kilometers from Patna. So Sanjay, I want to come to you before we get into the wider ramifications of these protests and what they really mean for these governments. If we go into the Kolkata incident, which has been at the center of this massive political storm, do you see that the Mamata Banerjee government is facing a litmus test never seen before that could possibly threaten the survival of her government? We saw that she herself took a protest march against what many were saying was her own government, because the home portfolio is under her, the police is under her. So is she facing a first of a kind survival test that she has not witnessed in the last 13 years?
I would not like to see this politically, because it is not only Mamata government which is facing the litmus test. It's Indian society which is facing the litmus test. Indian system, administration, police which are facing the litmus test. If we judge on the responses of the government, then there are many governments in this country, many states which will be in trouble. So if there is a political conspiracy to dislodge Mamata, I don't support it. Mamata should resign. If Yogi resigns for Hathras and Unnao, if Uttarakhand Chief Minister resigns for Ankita Bhandari, if what happened in Maharashtra removes the Chief Minister. So if we see it through political prism, then we open a Pandora's box. My problem is that what is the response of the Prime Minister? Addressing the nation from the ramparts of the Red Fort, the Prime Minister said that we should strike fear into the wrongdoer. Now, what do we want? We want a fearful society? No, we need an ethical society. We need ethical politics. We do not need a Netanyahu or a Taliban to strike fear into the people to stop rape. Ask the women of Afghanistan, are they happy? No, they are not happy. This is a question of women's empowerment. This is a question of rights. This is a question of democratic freedom. This is a question, we need moral approach to social issues. But what right now we are doing, the kind of media spectacle going on, targeting Mamata Banerjee, I think we are diverting from the main issue.
Smita, how do you see this? The fact is that we saw women taking to the streets in such large numbers on August 14th, just on the eve of the Independence Day, demanding their freedom. These are scenes that we have not seen in the last 12 years. The last time was in 2012 during the Nirbhaya protests, but that was in a sense confined to Delhi. This time we saw the protests not just in Bengal but in other cities as well. Women took to the streets, and the larger question really is that these politicians are not being able to address people's anger. And do you see this anger bubbling over against the Mamata Banerjee government and the larger issue? How do you see that?
You know, it's so multi-layered and complex right now, Sravasti. While ideal situation would have been, as Sanjay mentions, to not look at it through a political prism and look at it through the morality lens. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen in any case of rape or sexual assault in this country. And there's been a history to it, and there's been a pattern to it. And I find a problem with every level today. It's not just the political leadership, but it's even the civil society response. I mean, these protests, and I know people are angry. We call Kolkata the city of joy. It's looking visibly upset, disappointed, angry, hurt for completely justifiable reasons. I mean, there's this young 31-year-old trainee doctor, who's just gruesomely killed, raped in her workspace. I mean, imagine the workspace also not being safe. Where do women go from here? That's as horrendous as it gets. Now, having said that, I will just break it down. I'll take a couple of minutes to break down why I find it problematic at so many different levels. One, when it comes to the political leadership in the state, why the spotlight is on Mamata Banerjee. Yes, Mamata Banerjee, I do agree, is in a soup right now with this incident. I think she has sort of lost that moral, tall standing that she could enjoy every time she was very vocal and spoke on rape cases in other states. And my point is that yes, there are several top leaders, including whether it's the Prime Minister, the Home Minister or BJP leaders who have not spoken on all past incidents. Why can't leaders aspire for higher benchmarks? Why can't you aspire for higher standards? How difficult was it for you as a woman chief minister, and the only woman chief minister currently, who takes pride in the fact that you have also sent the largest number of women MPs to parliament, which is an excellent fact and which needs to be credited for, to actually start looking at this incident from day one with empathy and sympathy, instead of going into a denial mode to start with, instead of going into this entire political interplay to start with. I mean, there were reports that the government was trying to sell this as a case of suicide initially. If the Kolkata police was messing it up, what stopped you? The Kolkata police was reporting to you. When she took out that march, she was essentially taking out against the CBI and saying that, the CBI should hang the perpetrators within this certain deadline, which is absolutely absurd. So that's why the spotlight is on Mamata. I do think she has weakened. But if the BJP thinks that they are gaining grounds by these prolonged protests, I am told that there is a march that has been called for on 27 to Navanno, which is the government offices, and to her residence as well, which nobody is taking claim for, but is possibly being planned by the ABVP. So if the BJP thinks that by fishing into these troubled waters, BJP has a lot to answer at the national level when it comes to its own stands on different rape cases. The CPM, for all you know, actually may see a political gain out of this entire thing. But the point is that here, why I said that I also have a problem with the civil society response, because unfortunately in this country, the public outrage on sexual assault cases is defined and led by either the caste, the class, the religion of the victim, or the fact as to what is the social potential of the victim, how do you see the victim. You don't see a public outrage happening over every day. But whereas if you wake up, and you and I, and even Sanjay, when we scroll through our Twitter handles and the X handles, it looks like a doomsday strolling. Every fourth tweet, fifth tweet is about some rape happening. I mean, from a nurse in Dehradun, even as the protests are on, to to Muzaffarpur that you mentioned. But if you look at the series of protests, I mean, the one thing that has been a defining sort of a thing in the last 10-12 years is, you see what happened in Kathua. It was so unfortunate. People coming out to support the rapists of, the accused rapists in the case. They
wanted the rapist to be saved because he was a priest.
Yeah. And if it was the BJP that was rallying in support of the rapists at that point in time, and look at which party gave it a ticket later on.
Congress has
it gave it Congress. So I don't know, nobody can say ki I have a higher moral stand. But the problem is when civil society and these doctors, and I've told these doctors also, when these associations, FIMA, FODA, IMA is concerned, that when you choose to stay silent, when something is affecting the others, or it's not directly impacting you, you're also enabling a pattern. When civil society doesn't stand up for a Bilkis Bano, when civil society doesn't stand up for Hathras, when civil society doesn't stand up for a horrendous crime that was perpetrated in Manipur under the watch of, with Mr. N. Biren Singh being the chief minister there, and those videos that were circulated. So, but when you choose to, pick one over the other, you essentially are comparing the victims, you are comparing the crimes against these victims, and this is where you have a sort of cleavage that is exploited by political parties who will use it as a tool to further their agenda instead of actually focusing on delivering swift, speedy, time-bound justice. So you will be used as political tools, and I know for sure that these doctors right now are very frustrated because they've been trying to meet Mr. JP Nadda, the health minister. They are asking for a Central Protection Act because the trainee doctors have also been subjected to a lot of violence, especially in government hospitals, who work excruciatingly long hours. And they're asking in media groups, in the WhatsApp groups, that why is the health minister not listening to us? That's why you see that reluctance in resuming their work despite the matter being in Supreme Court. And the point is that for the centre, it works in their interest if the protests are prolonged because it paints Mamata Banerjee in a certain light. It works for them if they are able to deploy CISF forces in Calcutta. But on the other hand, if this is really a subject, you were wanting to bulldoze farm laws. What is stopping you from giving a written assurance on the Central Protection Act, making these workplaces safer?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point that you're raising, which often tends to be glossed over in these conversations where, of course, doctors are right in demanding justice, demanding protection in the workplace. But also the fact is that it's not just about doctors, it's about women as a whole. It's about a whole section of the society which don't feel safe, and only a certain amount of outrage is not going to satisfy the population.
I've come across people in the protests, young girls who are now asking for a Talibani style of punishment. They simply come and tell cameras that, we want hang over the accused to us, we will hang them in public. So if this is the response that is being generated, it is also stemming from deep-rooted frustration. Yes. I mean, look at the NCRB records, 56 rapes in 1 hour every day. Yes. Every hour, in 2022, the NCRB records are speaking for themselves.
And this is not really highlighted. The fact is that now, because a lot of attention is on the Kolkata rape incident, which it deserves, absolutely deserves, but also the fact is that at the end of the day, India is one of the most unsafe places for women, and rapes happen, as Smita mentioned, every day. And if we just widen the scope of this discussion a little bit to talk about who should we seek justice from? Just yesterday, the Association for Democratic Reforms and New Election Watch took out a report which said that a total of 151 MPs and MLAs, sitting MPs and MLAs, are facing charges of crimes against women. Now, this includes 16 who are facing charges of rape. Among the parties, the BJP is the highest, and among the states, West Bengal tops this list of legislators having cases of crimes against women. So, Sanjay, laws were, of course, tightened in 2012 after the Nirbhaya protests. We saw, in a sense, the UPA government, which was voted out 2 years later, also paid a price for it. But as these cases come to the fore, and what has really changed, and what can the public really expect in terms of legislation?
This only proves that laws are not good enough. Laws are not enough to create a secure environment for women. See, only a decent political culture can provide a safe environment for women. If, as a man, I believe that women do not have equal rights as men, women should be confined to home, women should not be empowered, then I will object to her freedom. I will indulge in violence. So, first you have to correct the political ideology. A political culture which does not give justice to victims of right she mentioned the name of Bilkis Banu. We cannot expect them to provide justice to any rape victim. What happened to Ankita Bhandari? A woman doctor being raped and killed is very bad, is heinous. But what is the message that was sent from the Uttarakhand? That if you want to be alive, you have to do prostitution for me. A political leader, son of a political leader, wants a sexual object in his political armory. What is the purpose? So, it's a sick society. If a young girl does not want to do prostitution for a politician, she is killed. So, death is a very bad thing. But if you have to be alive, you have to accept the conditions set by men, by the powerful people. And who are these powerful people? You have just mentioned the data given out by ADR. The Prime Minister, when he came in 2014, he said that I am going to purge parliament, all the criminals. You know, criminals do not have an independent mechanism to flourish. Criminals flourish under political patronage, under the support and protection of police, administration, corporate. So, what we have to do is to address those fundamentals. If you think that if there is a home minister who belongs to our party and who calls girls for massage and you protect him, if a woman is of international repute, athlete, is beaten up on the streets and you do not speak a word, if women are paraded naked in Manipur, you do not speak a word, this shows that we are a perverse nation. We have a perverse political culture. Till we address that, that's what I said. When Prime Minister is talking about the doctrine of force, that is problematic. When the Prime Minister defines himself as a 56-inch thing, Nehru was a moral force, a moral giant. He never measured his virtues in terms of toxic masculinity. Indira Gandhi was known the world over for courage. Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh never measured their virtues on a scale. We should have realized in 2014 that 56-inch narrative is a negation of Gandhian empathy.
And that's really the moral question that is facing everyone in the country today, that while we do face a moment of reckoning in the country in a sense, there's a lot to think about in our demands for justice and who we are asking justice for and whether it's only for a certain section and how we should expand it. So just moving on to the other big...
I just want to wrap it up with, because you asked what do we do? Yes. I think there's just 3-4 things that we need to do. One, we need to stop political patronage to sexual assaults. When you have self-styled godmen like Asaram, the other Ram Rahim, getting payroll every now and then while you have people in jail not getting bail for years, it sends out a message that everything is all right. And these are convicted. These are not even accused. These are convicted men. Yes. You cannot have selective speaking up. Whether it's political leaders, whether it's civil society. You got to speak up uniformly for every survivor or victim of sexual assault and rape. Third, you look at the entire Me Too campaign that had happened across Indian newsrooms also. Today, so many of them. Tell me what action was taken against so many accused. So many of them have been reinstated in newsrooms in higher positions. And so many of the dignitaries have actually been platformed back by media houses. So even media needs to do an introspection of where we stand in this fight. Fourth, it's absolutely important that the sons be raised right today. If it doesn't start from your homes, you're not going to change society in any way. I have 2 young nieces today who are joining these protests and I know how disturbed they are. They are thinking of applying elsewhere, maybe somewhere abroad. It's not like internationally things are secure. Rape cases are very high even in the United States. But the difference that happens is the wheels of justice moving faster. And I think in India, it's the slowest. I mean, just last week, I saw Jyoti Yadav of The Print, and she has been doing some excellent reportage on the issue, how this Ajmer case, after 32 years, a gang rape survivor found closure when 6 accused have been convicted. If it takes 32 years for a gang rape case to be closed, I mean, you imagine what kind of legal loopholes are being exploited by those in power. You're giving political patronage to those who can get you vote banks, to those who have money. You are depending on the profile of the victim, you're deciding whether to stand with her or not. So unless you don't remove these selective lenses and you don't start raising the sons right from the moment that they are born and they're into their homes, nothing is going to change.
It's not just the mother's responsibility.
Here I have a different opinion. We cannot see women's safety in isolation. If you have raised an infrastructure of injustice and exploitation, that will have manifestations in other spheres of life.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree with you at all.
If the political ideology does not believe in women's equality, in gender equality,
yeah, that
has to be addressed first.
That's an absolute problem.
It is not for the families to raise their sons right. No. It is for the political ideology, the philosophy that we adopt as a nation.
I am saying this has to go hand in hand. The generations that are coming in now,
the larger framework has to be corrected.
But it makes a difference when you also raise your children right. When you're making the generations
that is a small part of the entire problem.
But
the bigger problem is that philosophically you do not agree in gender equality.
No, but how long? You think you can only keep hoping for a morally high leadership in India? You can keep waiting for it.
No, but a political party which governs this country, or which
I am not denying it.
Which aspires to govern this country, must have a correct ideology.
Sanjay, we also need to remember that while the rape cases have grown, the graphs have grown, Nirbhaya did not happen when the BJP was in power. Let's accept that. So what I'm saying is that while the BJP has come in, you have a different, very male-centric, masculine toxicity, political, divisive agenda that is supporting, and you have all the incidents that I mentioned, from Bilkis Bano to Hathras, which are very, very sorry chapters. But I'm saying that, do you wait for the governments to change, hoping that the next government will be morally upright? As citizens also, I think you need to get vocal about every case, and you need to...
See these issues, gender equality, rights, empowerment have to be on the mainstream political agenda. When are we discussing?
No, but that's what I'm saying, Sanjay, because they are not there,
discussing
so we also need to develop our own.
We are not discussing fairness and justice.
People have to decide which issues they want to vote on. These very people who are protesting right now, they need to make up their mind in the next election.
People are being misled.
Whether these are votes,
people are gullible. People are being consciously misled. There is a method behind this madness.
But also the fact is that we need to think about how, what is the environment at home, and it's not the responsibility of mothers alone is what I also want to add to this point. It's the general environment where we come from and eventually where we do end up. So moving on to the other big development that we have seen over the past week is that the NDA government in a major development has in a way shown its political compulsions of being in a coalition government for the first time in a decade, and has had to withdraw an advertisement by the UPSC, which was issued on Saturday, for 45 lateral entries in central government posts. Now, this advertisement, which was first issued on Saturday, met with pushback not just from the opposition, but from its own allies, including Union Minister Chirag Paswan of the LJP, who publicly said that there can be no ifs and buts on reservations. Now, while the opposition is trying in a way to claim vindication for the fact that this advertisement has been withdrawn, the fact is also the BJP has faced pushback from its own allies. So, Sanjay, this is really the third rollback in a sense from the new government, something that we have not seen in the last decade. First, the Waqf Amendment Bill, which was first introduced in the Lok Sabha, it was sent to the JPC. The broadcast bill draft has been withdrawn. We are hearing, we are not clear what is the exact status of that. Yeah, perhaps they will come up with a separate draft of the bill. We don't know that yet. And now the fact that there has been a rollback of this advertisement, even though union ministers were defending lateral entry a day before it was withdrawn. So, do you see the BJP now yielding to pressure from its allies?
If the BJP is yielding to pressure, that's a welcome development, because any government should respond to democratic pressures. We have seen last 10 years, Modi government refused to respond to political pressures. Now, whether they yielded to the pressure of the allies or of the people, because caste factor was very important in this discourse. My problem is that is the Modi government interested in, they have said that it's because they wanted exceptional talent, that's why they brought this system. Are they interested in talent? That is the myth we should discuss first. Narendra Modi said that I am going to bring new India, make new India. In 2014, he got an opportunity to create a new political culture. What he does? He appoints Smriti Irani as the education minister. What is the message he is sending? Is that exceptional talent? Does he show that he is interested in promoting and preserving talent. Raghuram Rajan was part of the system. Why he had to leave? If a government cannot retain Raghuram Rajan and they are saying that they are going to bring exceptional talent, how do you believe that? The lateral entry in politics during Narendra Modi time, he gave ticket to Pragya Singh Thakur. His find is Kangana Ranaut, that latest historian India has to suffer with.
But I think the larger question really is the fact that the political compulsions, as you're saying, is a welcome development, but also this withdrawal. Smita, I want to ask you how you see this, whether it's because of the pressure from its allies or the opposition, but also the fact that the withdrawal came just a day before this Bharat Bandh that was held yesterday, in which Dalit organizations across the country held massive protests against the Supreme Court's order allowing states subcategorization for SCs and STs. Now, the cabinet has said that there will be no creamy layer, which is part of the observations of the Supreme Court, but not part of the judgment. But the government has not been clear about what it really is going to do about the subcategorization part. But just a day before the Bandh, they went and withdrew this advertisement. So do you see the BJP really preempting and acting in a preemptive
so much because
manner?
of the Bandh which happened yesterday, I would say, that really didn't see a pan-India impact anyway, barring some specific states. But yes, there were plans. I think even Akhilesh Yadav had announced and some others had announced that on 2nd October we'll do a massive step up nationwide. Look, I think it's very clear that that 240 mark has had an impact. NDA right now, or under Modi 3.0, is not the same as the last 10 years. 2024 is a different story for the BJP government compared to what it could do and was doing in 2014. That's something which has become very clear. On Waqf, on broadcast bill, while they have taken a step back, they've not exactly been rolled back, but sent to at least a parliamentary consultation process, which was sacrificed on the altar of majoritarianism over the last 10 years. And the farm bills was the first major rollback that had happened. But it was constantly, pushing out ideas, and as Derek O'Brien once said, that parliamentary scrutiny has come to an end because you're simply passing legislations as if you're selling pizzas. So it's such a quick, instant process because you have a brute majority in the lower house, so you're just able to push through. That has changed. You have a very strong opposition bench now. Even the quality of the discussions has gone up within parliament, which is obviously healthy and welcome for definitely the country that is the world's largest democracy so far, at least on paper and going by our traditions. B, there is a nervous jitteriness in Mr. Modi for sure. It reflects in his body language. It does reflect, and if Eating Crow had a face, it would be Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav with his 2 tweets within hours, which changed, and the video message where he didn't look very happy about making that message because he was doing a complete U-turn. In the first case when you were blaming the Congress and saying that, look, you guys brought in lateral entry, why are you complaining about it? And then he turned around to say, though, because Mr. Modi believes in the social mandate, in the mandate of social justice, so this is a master stroke. But there are deeper problems. And the problem is that when you look at bringing in these posts, and in this government, 2018 onwards, you've already had 63 posts filled up so far. Yes, now you're looking at 45 posts advertised. And what they were doing was, essentially, they were looking at the single post system to, go past the reservation thing, which is a part of the 13-point roster. According to that, in these 45 posts also, there would have been a certain percentage that should have been allocated to SC, STs, OBCs, EWS, which wasn't the case. I think Mr. Modi does realize that there is an issue that the Congress has taken up as a key issue to fight communal ideology, and which is this issue of social mobilization on caste. In the run-up to elections, and I was traveling extensively across the states, that whisper on the ground, कि आकर संविधान बदल देंगे, which started off following interviews of BJP leaders. It didn't start off from a vacuum. It was real. That fear was real. Dalit after Dalit villages that we went to, we used to request the people that, please don't get personally abusive because they were so angry. There is there are chairs that need to be respected because of the constitutional posts. They were so angry that their reservations and their rights are going to be snatched away. And if you have a system, look, the merits of lateral entrance is a separate debate. I'm not saying that those who come in as entrants are not competitive, are not, who do not have the sentiment of serving the nation. But is there a vetting process? Is there a transparency? People who come in through the UPSC, for instance, through mains, through prelims, they work crazy hours. There are young students who die of suicide because they're not able to crack through the civil services. And then they spend years before they can reach that joint secretary ranks. Here, if you're having these lateral entrants come into the joint secretary and deputy director levels, 63 is a large number. It means you have taken up the rightful sort of hierarchical rise to these positions of so many people who cracked in through the UPSC.
And that's really the charge that is against the system of lateral entry, not the fact that specialists should not be brought in.
No, nobody's against specialists.
No, I have a problem here. See, the caste reservation is an issue. It's a very serious issue. But the secret design is to facilitate corporate takeover of the system. That is a far more dangerous and far more sinister objective of this government. What they want, as he said, around 100 officers coming from the corporate background. Why? That means you are saying that the IAS recruitment system is bogus, that you do not have a talent pool within the government. And this is borrowed from the American system. America has this kind of relationship between the corporate and the government. Somebody is Secretary of State and tomorrow he will be heading a multinational company. But again, he will go back to the government.
Conflict of interest.
There is a serious conflict of interest. Suppose somebody is working for a telecom company. He comes in a decision-making process in the government, in telecom ministry. What will he do? Where is the question of accountability? Where is the question of secrecy? We have seen this in American culture. George Bush attacked Iraq, and which was the company given the contract for reconstruction of Iraq? The person, the CEO of that company, Bechtel, was the Department of State Secretary.
That's right.
So this kind of system, are we going to accept here? So the very concept is problematic and it's dangerous.
And Madhavi Buch is also a lateral entrant of sorts into SEBI.
Yes,
look at her Indian report.
And the ministers are giving example of Manmohan Singh to defend this system. Why in 10 years they could not create their own example?
But also, finally, before we move on to this very quickly, I want to ask you, Smita, the fact is that in his letter, Jitendra Singh, who's the MOS DOPT, he said that, as you were mentioning, Prime Minister believes in social justice and therefore lateral entry needs to be aligned with reservations. But just before that, as we were mentioning earlier, Arjun Ram Meghwal, Ashwini Vaishnav, they were defending the lateral entry, not having reservations, by saying that SC, ST, OBCs can also apply if they want. But the very next day when it was withdrawn,
they are more loyal than the kings. That's how they are saving their chairs. You think that they have a voice, they can stand up and say that no, this is wrong, or they can question.
Vaishnav is one of the example of the disaster of this system.
He's a lateral entrant.
He's a lateral entrant. So does the BJP seem to be not speaking in one voice anymore?
No, BJP is speaking in the one voice which is being dictated from above. If the PM says this is a good policy, everybody says good policy. If the PM says go after Rahul Gandhi, then the entire cabinet is going after Rahul Gandhi. The thing is that, as I was saying, that I think the Congress managed to make this caste issue a very sensitive and a key issue in its fight against, and Rahul Gandhi is not willing to let go of it. I mean, there are dangers to it of a blowback also if he takes it to a point, because the larger sort of general category may find it a little disappointing or whatever, but he's sticking to it. He's not diverting from it. And which is why today, if you see in the Hindu also, there's also now this report that they're actually looking at finally moving on with the census, which is already so delayed, and looking at the caste enumeration also in it. So I think the government is definitely on a back foot on this issue when you have voices, whether it's an Akhilesh Yadav, a Chandrasekhar Azad, and whether it's a Chirag Paswan or a JDU, they will have to at the end of the day look back at their domestic constituents and their interests too. So it's not 2014. It's not 2019 anymore for Mr. Modi.
Yes. And also, finally, before we end, let's just quickly tell our viewers that Prime Minister Modi is on a visit to Ukraine and Poland this week. Now, his visit to Ukraine comes 6 weeks after he went to Moscow, and that visit was under a lot of criticism after he hugged President Vladimir Putin, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the time criticized Prime Minister Modi for hugging Putin at a time when there was active bombing bombing going on in Ukraine, including on a children's hospital. Now, this is the first time that an Indian Indian Prime Minister, I beg your pardon, is visiting Ukraine since its independence in 1992. Smita, 1991. So, this is a significant visit. The fact that it's coming weeks after Modi visited Moscow as well. How do you see this visit, and what is the significance for India and especially Modi, because he faced that criticism not just from Ukraine but also from the US, which is a strategic partner for India?
Well, yeah, there were statements made by the US State Department. Look, it's an important visit. I mean, all said and done, not too many world leaders have traveled to Ukraine. And, you know, I can tell your viewers a little sort of a backstory. This visit is a nightmare for the protocol team right now, because it's the first time that a head of government from India is going on international land, and basically not just in the middle of conflict, but going to be in a train for as many as 10 to 12 hours, because that's the only way they can ride. So all world leaders who have gone into Kiev have had to take that train from Poland. And you know, it's a train ride which requires for people to come after a 10-hour ride to come and change the compartments from the Polish gauge to the Ukrainian gauge, where the leaders are not supposed to leave the compartment but levitate, because the compartments are bolted. You have to change the bolts, the compartments go up, and then the bogies are shifted, and then the bolts are tightened. So it's actually a nightmare for the External Affairs Ministry protocol team. And which is why on Friday, in fact, you'll not get to see live signals of everything. You'll see delayed feeds. When the Prime Minister is in Kiev, you'll see feeds which are embargoed and delayed because of security reasons. So you will not have a minute-to-minute live transmission, unlike in the other visits that you happen. Now, having just given that little side story, see, I think for Mr. Modi, yes, there is pressure from US. The Russia visit, the hug was questionable, but the visit, we all know that India is not going to abandon Russia under any sort of an American pressure. I mean, the oil and gas that we are now importing from Russia is multiple times more than when before the war started. It's actually become one of our largest suppliers now. So, for India, I think for Mr. Modi, on the world stage, it is a message to show that, look, we have kept our lines of communication open with both leaders. They are still talking to us. Mr. Modi has met Zelensky 3 times along the sidelines of summit meetings in the past few years. And, just this fact that it's not about India wanting to mediate. I think people are overreading if they think that Mr. Modi is going there with an offer of mediation. But it's about trying to create an atmosphere where perhaps these two people can come and talk, because he does enjoy a certain leverage with Mr. Putin. But at the end of the day, I also do agree with Mr. Raja Mohan when he wrote in the Indian Express that this is really about India thinking through its Central European policies, which has been sidelined for a while. So India is wanting to invest in a Poland, which is growing. It is an important partner there. Ukraine, post-war recovery is always a minefield of an opportunity for actually countries and companies to go in there and invest and make money. And Ukrainians have been wanting Indians to come in. I was a part of a very small group of journalists who were meeting for dinner with the foreign minister, Mr. Kuleba, when he was here earlier this year. And I was also in Switzerland, in Bergenstock, when the Ukraine Peace Summit was being held in June this year, where the mood in the room was very clear from all the countries, because India did not represent itself politically there. It only sent a senior diplomat, Pavan Kapoor, and India did not sign on the outcome document. It said we only came in to observe. But from all the stakeholders in the room, it was very clear that people knew that you cannot have a negotiation on Russia-Ukraine by excluding Russia anymore. If you want things to move forward, the Russians need to be into the room. So how do you bring the Russians into the room? There you will need countries that have a certain degree of trust. So India could be one of them as a facilitator, not as a mediator. But I think it's really about the larger Central European politics at this point in time that India, and importantly, the message that, India is wanting perhaps to dehyphenate Kiev and Moscow. India has done this balancing act. This government may continue to show all sorts of, want to distance itself from Nehruvian non-aligned movement to, strategic and call it, of course, that this is we are not maintaining distances, we are now growing closer. But the fact is that it continues to do a tightrope walking between Iran and in Israel, between rival partners in other countries also, whether it's in Israel or Palestine. So it's really, I think, an attempt to show to the international community that India is a serious global South voice. it's there.
And that's what finally I want to ask you, Sanjay, as Smita was just mentioning. The fact is that Modi has made it very clear that India wants to have its own close ties with all countries. Now, a statement that he has given yesterday when he was, today in fact, when he was meeting expats in Poland is that for decades, India's policy was to maintain distance from all countries. The situation has now changed. Today, India's policy is to maintain close ties with all countries, and India wants to connect with everyone. Now, this is being seen as a subtle jab on the non-alignment movement earlier under the Congress governments. How do you see this? Is this in a way taking his domestic policy into his foreign policy, or should one see it in light of, as Smita was mentioning, the larger Indian foreign policy of maintaining closer ties with everyone?
See, as far as the question of criticizing the foreign policy of India by Narendra Modi on foreign soil, that's not a new thing. He has been doing it. What's tragic is that India's Prime Minister does not understand what India's foreign policy was. When he says that India had a policy of keeping a distance from all the countries, he is demonstrating his ignorance. I don't want to get into that. As Smita rightly said, India has a very important role to play in this crisis. India probably is the only country they can negotiate with Russia and Ukraine with equal ease. What is of concern to me is that over the last few years, India has lost its moral voice. Most of the political observers think that India is doing, or Narendra Modi is doing, balancing act. This balancing act will not do because there is no moral legitimacy. Everywhere, when Narendra Modi has used foreign policy for its own song and dance politics. Diplomacy needs gravitas and vision. What he has done? He goes on the foreign soil and abuses Indians, India's past governments. Do you think the world is blind? The world leaders are blind? They are stupid? They see through these games. And Narendra Modi thinks that it will bolster his biodata that he is the only leader who could go to Ukraine and Russia both. People have seen his language. A peace ambassador does not speak this language. Modi ne ghar mein ghus karke mara. When in the context of Pakistan, he was speaking like I don't want to use harsh words, but what is this language? Ki Modi se darta hai Pakistan. Modi ne ghar mein ghus ke mara. And he said it 100 times.
Very weird, honestly. I mean, referring to self as a third person.
And he repeated it 100 times. So India losing its moral authority on the global platform, that's the most serious diplomatic crisis we should think about.
All right, then we'll keep our eyes on all these developments, and Modi, of course, will be in Ukraine on Friday, and you can get all those updates on the wire as well as from Smita as well if you follow her on social media. So thank you so much, Sanjay and Smita, for joining us on the Wire Wrap, and thank you to our viewers for watching, and I'll see you next week.